In a classroom full of grad students, a 10-year-old boy suddenly showed up. Nobody in the class had any interest in the perpetual motion lecture, but this kid was brimming with confidence.
I accept the challenge.
The professor brushed it off as a naive joke. What he didn't realize was that this boy had a design talent far beyond his years. Through sheer persistence, he built a perpetual motion machine that could run for 400 years. But what no one expected was that this young prodigy was completely overlooked at home. His father was a quiet cowboy, a man of few words, who carried the silence of the open range. His mother was a brilliant entomologist who spent most of her time lost in the microscopic world. The favorite was his little brother, inheriting their dad's wild spirit. Horseback riding, outdoor skills, he was great at all of it. So naturally, their father poured all his affection into him. But the world of a genius is often destined to be misunderstood. In his father's eyes, T.S. Spivet was just an awkward, introverted kid, a weirdo who only drew ugly diagrams. No match for his brother in any way. T.S. figured he'd just keep living in this cold household, bottling everything up forever, until a sudden, unexpected tragedy changed everything. One day, his brother was outside doing outdoor practice as usual. T.S. suddenly suggested trying to catch the sound wave from the loud noise. But an accident suddenly happened. After a deafening noise, his brother's young life was suddenly lost. After that, nobody in the family ever mentioned his brother again, as if this once beloved child had never existed in this home. Even though nobody directly blamed T.S., he could still feel it. His father, already distant, became even more withdrawn. T.S. started to panic inside, terrified of losing his father's attention completely. So he carefully built a 3D model of the farm, hoping to help his dad solve the water shortage problem, and maybe thaw the ice between them. But before T.S. could even begin to explain it, his father brushed him off. His father's casual dismissal felt like a tiny needle pricking T.S. right in the heart, leaving him crushed. But what hurt even more was that his mother buried herself in endless work, trying to numb the pain of losing her son, and his sister barely gave him the time of day. All this coldness and distance closed in around him like an invisible net, trapping this already sensitive boy, and making him want to leave home on his own. One day, T.S. got an unexpected phone call from the Smithsonian. They told him his design won the prestigious Baird Award, their highest honor, and he was invited to the ceremony the following week. This kind of recognition doesn't just celebrate your work, it opens doors to an entire world of academic opportunity. T.S. was thrilled, absolutely over the moon. He rushed to tell his sister the great news, but the moment the words left his mouth, she thought he was making the whole thing up and chewed him out for it. Her reaction made T.S. realize something. If his parents already thought his ideas were impractical nonsense, they'd never believe he won an award, let alone support him going to the ceremony. But he couldn't pass up the chance to meet real scientists. After thinking long and hard, he decided to make the 1,000-mile trip to Washington, D.C. on his own, the nation's capital, home to world-class research and cultural institutions. That's exactly why this trip meant so much to him. Late that night, he quietly packed his bags and got ready to leave. But just as he dragged his heavy suitcase downstairs, he stopped. He didn't want to just disappear without a word, and he was afraid his family would panic when they found him gone, so he grabbed a pen and paper and wrote a goodbye letter.
Dear Spivet family, I have gone for a while to do some work. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I didn't want to bother you by telling you about it ahead of time. Thank you for taking care of me. You were one of the best families in the world. Love, T.S.
Out of curiosity, just before heading out, T.S. secretly took his mother's diary with him. In the pale morning light, he set off on his journey to Washington. Full of excitement, he had no idea just how rough the road ahead would be. He hadn't gone far when his father's truck suddenly came up from behind. T.S. thought his dad was coming to stop him, but the truck just blew right past without slowing down. In that moment, T.S. became convinced that because he was responsible for his brother's passing, his father was punishing him with his cold indifference. To catch a train, T.S. waited until the coast was clear, then climbed up a trackside signal light and painted the yellow signal red. As the train whistle grew louder, he ducked behind a stack of steel beams. And sure enough, the train actually stopped. But just as he was about to sneak aboard, a security guard spotted him. T.S. scrambled out of sight in a panic before he could catch his breath. The train started moving again. He knew he couldn't stay trapped there. So he gritted his teeth and crawled out fast, risking getting caught. But the guard was right on his tail. At the very last second, T.S. leaped onto a cargo conveyor belt.
Oh my God!
Just like that, T.S. finally shook off his pursuer and made it onto the train bound for Washington. Along the way, T.S. saw rivers and mountains he'd never experienced up close. From western prairie streams to the vast rivers of the Great Plains, these stunning landscapes showcased America's incredible geographic diversity. Even the meadowlarks he'd only ever seen in books were now soaring alongside the wind. Giving T.S. a first-hand understanding of how nature and life are intertwined, he threw his arms wide open, as if all the pressure and frustration that had built up at home was melting away with the breeze. Finally, release. But the journey wasn't as smooth as he'd hoped. As the train passed through an industrial area, an announcement came on about a security inspection. TS panicked instantly. Afraid of being discovered, he tried to find somewhere to hide. But with no good options, he ducked into a packed cargo car and accidentally locked the door behind him. When the inspector started checking the cars, TS's heart was in his throat. To avoid being caught, he cleverly posed as a display mannequin. He thought that would be enough to fool them. But the inspector stared at him for a long time. Something about this stiff-looking figure didn't seem right, and TS's nose slowly started to drip. Only made the inspector more suspicious. TS kept his eyes wide open, not daring to breathe. Luckily, at the last possible moment, the train's departure whistle suddenly blew. Breaking the tension, the inspector had to give up and hurry off, and TS narrowly escaped. That night, TS was extremely hungry. He knew he couldn't hold out much longer like this, so he planned to sneak off the train and buy a hot dog from a roadside stand, something he'd never tasted before. His mom always said junk food was unhealthy, and never let him have any. That's the modern health-conscious approach to eating, something more and more families have embraced over time. But TS had always secretly wanted to try one, even just one bite. But just as he was about to pay, he spotted an officer holding a missing person flyer. TS felt a jolt of panic. He quickly turned away. Luckily, the officer didn't notice him. But before he could relax, the lady at the stand looked at him for a few seconds and suddenly recognized him. Thankfully, she didn't make a scene. She just quietly told him his parents must be worried sick and urged him to go home.
I don't have a mother, ma'am. My parents are dead.
TS never thought he'd have to lie. A wave of guilt washed over him. He felt the weight that comes with dishonesty. He walked slowly to a phone booth and couldn't help but dial his home number.
Hello, TS? My son, you haven't been kidnapped? Oh, thank God. We're relieved. Oh, baby, you know, you're right. I've been wasting my time searching for this Estelle.
Son, we still got a situation with the crick. You were spot on with that culvert. What'd you say? Come right back?
But none of it was real, just a fantasy born from a need to be loved. He didn't actually have the courage to make that call. TS always felt like there was an invisible wall standing between him and his parents. No matter how hard he tried, he could never break through to their world. Weighed down by that relentless sense of distance, TS slipped into a quiet sadness without even realizing it. He longed to be like those kids wrapped in love, whose families actually noticed and accepted them. He just wished his parents would pay a little more attention and show him a little more warmth. Childhood is supposed to be carefree, but even though he was still just a kid, he'd already tasted the bitterness of loneliness. That heaviness kept him tossing and turning, unable to sleep. So TS opened his mother's diary, hoping it might ease his loneliness. Under the dim light, he looked at old family photos and felt a faint warmth slowly rising inside. But his mother's diary held more than boring work notes. It was full of emotions she'd kept hidden. She'd still catch herself walking to his brother's room out of habit, going to wake him up for school like she always did, only to suddenly remember he was gone and quietly turn back, heartbroken. Reading between the lines, TS also discovered his mother had actually noticed how down he'd been. She'd wanted to sit him down and talk several times, but never knew how to start. She even secretly wondered if she'd done something wrong. That made TS not even want to be close to her anymore, because ever since his brother's passing, TS would rather sit alone on a seesaw for hours than say a single word to her. That distance left his mother feeling both sad and helpless. Only now did TS finally understand that the love between him and his mother had always gone both ways. They were both just trapped in their own grief, too afraid to take that first step. Loving someone but not knowing how to show it. That's something so many families go through after a tragedy. It's just rare for someone to lay it out as openly as his mother did in her diary. The next day, the train finally pulled into bustling Washington, D.C. After getting off, TS stuffed a few essentials into his backpack and quickly stashed his suitcase out of sight. He didn't want heavy luggage slowing him down. He just wanted to get to his destination as fast as possible. He figured it would be smooth sailing from here. But just a few steps later, he ran right into a local officer. The officer looked him up and down. Seeing how young he was, the officer assumed he was skipping school and was about to haul him back there. TS panicked, instantly knew he was in trouble, and bolted. Just when he thought he'd lost the officer, he suddenly found himself at the edge of a dam gate. And to make matters worse, the gates that had been shut suddenly started sliding open. Staring at the bottomless spillway in front of him, TS had no choice but to stop.
Okay, Stitch. End of the line. Thanks for the exercise, but let's go. What? What are you gonna do? Come on, don't make me walk over there. No! Hey! Okay, hang on, kitty, all right? Hang on! Oh, Jesus. Don't look down! Don't look down! Get your foot up, come on, you can do it, come on! You can, don't look that good! Oh. You're very good.
T.S. managed to escape the chase, but hurt his ribs in the process. Waves of searing pain crashed over him, making every moment unbearable. He sat quietly on a stone post, and his homesickness hit its peak. He wished more than anything that his parents could appear right now. Even just to hold him for a moment, fighting through the pain, he dragged himself to the roadside, hoping to find a ride. Luckily, before long, a tanker truck slowly pulled over. The driver was a kind retired veteran. As T.S. climbed in, the man reminded him to buckle up, but the pained look on T.S.'s face caught the driver's attention. Seeing the boy's hurt ribs, the driver immediately offered to take him to a hospital. But T.S. was afraid the doctors would contact his family, and he didn't want his parents worrying about him, so he chose to grit his teeth and bear it. Seeing how determined the boy was, the driver didn't push it, he just quietly stepped on the gas. Maybe the pain eventually numbed his senses, because before he knew it, T.S. had drifted off to sleep, and when he woke up, he was amazed to find he'd finally arrived.
Not sure what you're looking for, but don't change a thing. Steady in your boots. Good luck, man.
After saying goodbye to the driver, T.S., heart full of anticipation, arrived at the Grand Smithsonian Institution building. It was everything T.S. had dreamed of. But when the receptionist heard why he was there, her jaw practically hit the floor. Though skeptical, she immediately called the director.
He is actually T.S. Spivet. He is 9, 10 years old and very, very, very small.
When the director rushed over and saw T.S. standing there, she simply couldn't believe that the perpetual motion machine that amazed so many experts was built by this 10-year-old kid. She was about to walk away when what T.S. said next completely changed her mind.
I just transposed the principle of an electron gravitating around the nucleus. But as you know, to simulate its perpetual motion would require the creation of a negative entropy, which is simply not possible. You must agree, right?
The director never imagined that T.S.'s grasp of science could reach this level. It was like discovering a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. She was ecstatic, eager to turn T.S. into a marketable sensation. The director had him all dressed up for the occasion. The turnout at the ceremony was way beyond expectations. People looked at T.S. as if admiring a one-of-a-kind treasure, kissing up to him with fake praise. But clever T.S. saw right through it. These so-called high society guests wore nothing but flashy, phony smiles, without an ounce of sincerity. When it came time for his speech, thunderous applause erupted from the crowd. T.S. walked nervously up to the podium. Facing a sea of strangers, he was overwhelmed with anxiety, as if the whole world had frozen in place. He tried to find some warmth, some genuine connection in the crowd, but those so-called academic elders weren't radiating the quiet elegance of scholarly wisdom, just the tacky glint of jewelry. A hint of sadness crept into T.S.'s eyes. After steadying himself, he tentatively greeted the audience, and then began his speech. He acknowledged everyone here had impressive degrees and titles, while he was just an elementary school student with no profound knowledge to share. So he would only talk about 3 things. First, he thanked the judges for not disqualifying him just because he was a kid. Second, about his perpetual motion machine. It runs on magnets, but the magnetism will fade after 400 years. To build a truly perpetual machine, humanity still has a long way to go. As he spoke, every word T.S. said struck a chord with everyone in the room. They were amazed, and he opened their minds to entirely new ideas. But what T.S. said next shattered the festive mood in the room.
I lost my brother this year. It happened in the barn. No one talks about it. No one ever says what really happened that day. Leighton and I, we were always very different. I had been doing my scientific experiments, and he would be hitting empty bean cans doing target practice. So I came up with this idea to make sound waves match the loud impacts. That way we could play something together. He would aim, and I gathered data, and one day his gear jammed. I held the bottom of it to help out. I swear I didn't even touch the mechanism. But he wasn't my brother anymore.
T.S.'s story broke everyone's heart. No one had imagined that this young genius was carrying such a painful burden. The entire room rose to their feet and applauded, hoping to offer some comfort to his wounded soul. Seeing the intense reaction from the crowd, the director worried T.S. might say something else off script. She also wanted to play up her own caring, maternal image, so she rushed up to the stage, pulled T.S. into a tight embrace, then whisked him away, like she was protecting a priceless artifact. In the director's eyes, T.S. wasn't just a brilliant mind who could generate profit. He was a brand that couldn't be damaged. She couldn't let him fall apart in front of everyone. But while everyone was caught up in the emotion, nobody noticed that behind the crowd, T.S.'s mother was watching from a distance. Her eyes filled with worry and guilt. She couldn't hide. To milk this wave of attention for all it was worth, the director filled T.S.'s days with interviews and paraded him through exclusive events. But despite it all, T.S. was never truly happy. He knew perfectly well they were all just using his name. Nobody actually cared about him. Nobody asked how his injuries were healing. Nobody cared about what he truly wanted deep down. Being treated like like a tool, left him feeling suffocated. When the homesickness became too much to bear, TS tried calling home, but all he got was a cold, steady, busy signal, which only deepened his despair. Then, as the director had arranged, TS was scheduled to appear on a popular TV show. To boost ratings, the moment the show began, the host hit him with a pointed question.
Last year, one of those went tragically wrong and resulted in the death of your twin brother, Leighton.
That question was like a knife, instantly piercing through TS's carefully held composure. His mind went completely blank. He had no idea how to respond. Just as the room sank into an awkward silence, his mother quietly appeared on set. This shocked not only TS, but also sent the director into a panic backstage. She realized if his mother took TS away right now, she'd lose her golden goose for good. TS stared at his mother, too overwhelmed to voice the shock and hurt swelling inside him. But what his mother said next caught him completely off guard. What about giving something so dangerous to a child as a gift? Or leaving two kids alone with something they didn't understand out in that barn? Do you think that was right? It wasn't your fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. His brother's passing had been the knot TS could never untangle. But now, hearing his mother say out loud, "It wasn't your fault," was like a beam of light, shattering the guilt he'd carried for so long. All his bottled-up pain came flooding out at once. He completely forgot they were on live television and threw himself into his mother's arms. His mother knew the show was just using her son for ratings. She refused to let him be exploited any longer and walked him right off the stage. But the greedy production crew wasn't about to let them go that easily. They chased after them with cameras rolling, and the director came charging out from backstage, trying to pressure them into staying. But his mother didn't give her an inch. She pushed her right back. Still, the host wouldn't give up. He blocked their way and refused to let them leave, until his father suddenly appeared behind them, and with one swift move, he pushed the host away. His father slowly crouched down and gently placed his hand on TS's shoulder, his voice warm with a tenderness he'd been hiding all along.
So I'm mute and I'm dead?
Sorry, Dad.
It turned out his father never disliked TS. He was just a man who never knew how to put his feelings into words. Then TS asked his father something. On the day he left home, why didn't his father stop the truck? His dad had just been bending down to pick something up. He never even saw TS, and yet those few seconds of missed connection had turned into a deep misunderstanding. The wall between father and son came down just like that. TS finally set off on the journey home, but this time he wasn't traveling alone. His parents were right there by his side. Watching TS's story is like looking into a mirror of your own heart. Haven't we all been that kid craving to be seen and accepted? Every time TS felt let down, every time he cautiously reached out, it touches the softest part of who we are. This film gently reminds us the deepest loneliness often comes from the ones closest to us. But through one extraordinary journey, it also reveals that the distance and misunderstanding don't come from a lack of love, but from not knowing how to show it. The silent tears in a mother's diary, a father's hand finally resting on his son's shoulder, quiet gestures, but deafening in their meaning. TS's journey wasn't just a kid leaving home on his own. It was a journey back to himself, a path to healing. In the end, he understood that making peace with the world starts with making peace with yourself. So, dear friend, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, please remember this. Your uniqueness is the universe's most precious gift to you. You don't have to sand down your edges to fit in. Be brave, be yourself, and the world will embrace you in its own time.